In the previous lesson, we used a timer to create a clock that we have down here in the bottom left-hand corner. But we can also use timers to run animation of sprites. And sprites are simply an object shown at different positions. Sometimes these positions are a walk cycle, so this is a character walking across the screen, or in this case a flight cycle of a goose with the wings flapping up and down. So we're going to use a timer to create this goose. Before we do that, you're going to have to log into our Canvas course site and download the images of the goose. I've logged into our cohort course site in Canvas. I'm going to go to the modules area. We're going to scroll down to the week 5 area on methods, and you'll find here goosesprites.zip. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to download it. I'm going to click on download. And then once it's downloaded, I'm going to open it up. And there are 4 images here, 4 different positions of the goose in flight. I'm going to extract those, noticing where they go to. So it's going to go into my downloads folder, into a folder called Goose Sprites. I'm going to say extract. And here then are the images of that goose. So in Goose 1, these are PNG files, so they're transparent backgrounds. Goose 1 has the wings at the bottom. They start to come up in Goose 2, coming up a little bit higher in Goose 3, and then in Goose 4 they're at the top. So the flight cycle is we're going to go Goose 1, Goose 2, Goose 3, Goose 4, but now we need to bring the wings back down. So we'd repeat Goose 3 and repeat Goose 2. And then we start back over. Goose 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. So that's going to be our cycle that we're going to use. Let's go into Visual Studio now. I'm in the same project we did in the previous video lesson where we created a clock with a timer. We're going to add our animation of the goose flying across the screen to this application, and we're going to do that by adding another timer. So I'm going to go to the components. I'll call this one TMR Goose. If we look at the goose sprites, we see the dimensions are 250 by 155. We use those numbers in importing those as an image list. So remember that an image list, the maximum size is 255 by 255. So we're going to create an image list in our project. And so again, I'm going to go to the components, drag an image list on the screen. And with this image list, we're going to name it IMG Goose. We're going to set the depth bit to 32-bit. These are PNGs with a transparent background. And our size should be 250, 155. I'm going to import the images. Go to my downloads, find the Goose Sprites folder. And I'm just going to click the first one, and then you hold down the Shift key, click the last one. That'll bring all 4 in, or select all 4. I'm going to click open, and there are my goose images. So goose 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to create a label. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go to my form, and I'm going to set the back color of the form. I'm going to click on the back color, go to the web, and come down to the blues. I'll choose the light sky blue. Then I'm going to create a label. I'm going to name the label LBL Goose. I'm going to set the auto size to false. Set the size, as you might have guessed, 250, 155. This is going to contain our goose sprites. And then I'm going to set the image list to IMG Goose. And also I made a mistake there in the name, so I'm going to come back to my image list, change that name to IMG Goose. So I got a 9 in there. Come back to the label, and now we're going to set the image list IMG Goose, and we're going to set the image index to 0. So there's our goose. Just going to position it over here on the left hand side of the page. I want to get rid of the text in that label, so let's just delete it. So all we have is the goose. Now I want to go back to my timer goose, TMR goose. We're going to have the interval set at 100 to start with. This is about 12 frames per second, which would be probably a little bit less than that. We'll try 100. And if it's too slow, we'll set that interval at a lower number. And if it's too fast, we'll increase the interval. I'm going to set the enabled property to true. And I'm just going to double click on TMR goose, and that will create a event handler called TMR goose _ tick. I could have also gone into the events area of the properties panel and given it another name. We're going to create a method called fly goose. And then I'm going to create that method, private void fly goose. It's not going to take any parameters. And I'm going to create a class level variable up here at the top. And we're going to call it goose position. It's going to be an integer. And we'll set equal to 0 to start with. So we're going to keep track of which position the sprites are in. Remember, the sprites will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, and then repeat. But I need to keep track of whether the wings are going up or down. So we're going to have goose position going from 0 basically through 5, so that 0, 1, 2, 3 are the goose going upwards, and then 4 and 5 will be the wings coming back. That'll be positions 2 and 1. So let's come down to fly goose. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to increment goose position by 1. And then we'll do a switch on goose position. So if the case is 1, or the case is 2, or the case is 3, we're simply going to change the LBL goose.ImageIndex to be goose position. And of course we need a break. Then if the case is 4, we're going to set LBL goose.ImageIndex equal to 2. That's bringing the wings back down. Need a break there. And I'm just going to copy that. Paste, make this case 5, and we'll set this to 1. So then I'm going to create a default, which will be if the goose position is 6, we want to set LBL goose.ImageIndex back down to 0, and I want to set goose position to 0, and add in my break. So there's our switch statement that will cause the goose to animate. It's going to animate in position at this point. It's not going to fly across the screen, but let's just test this and see if this works. And there we go. We have the goose flapping wings. Now it looks like there's a little bit of stutter there, and that's because I made a mistake, and I've got a 12 down here for image index. I want to set that to 1, and let's try this again. There we go. That looks much better. Pretty good timing. I think 100 is okay for this. What I want to have happen, though, is for the goose to fly across the screen. So we're simply going to do that by changing the position of LBL goose. So we're going to set LBL goose dot left plus equals 20. We're going to add 20 to it each time through, so it's going to move it to the right. Once it gets off the right of the screen, I want to bring it back to the left. So if LBL goose dot left, and my screen, I know how wide the screen is. We can use whatever property that is. So it's greater than this dot width. That's the width of my form. And width should be capitalized. I'm going to set LBL goose dot left to a minus 250. That'll put it completely off the screen on the left-hand side, and it'll come back in from the left. So let's try that. So the goose flies across the screen to the right, and it's going to come back over on the left. So we have what we would call a looping animation. All right, we're going to do two more things here. We're going to add a button. And the button will say pause goose. And we'll call it BTN pause. And I'm going to duplicate that button, paste it. This one's going to be BTN resume. And it'll be resume goose. I'm going to code the pause button. And all we're going to do here is set the enabled property of TMR goose to false. That stops the timer, and when the timer is stopped, the tick event is no longer occurring, and the animation will stop. And then we're going to do the same thing for the resume. And here we're just going to copy this line of code, paste it, and this will be true. And let's just test that. So now I can pause the goose, I can resume the goose, pause, resume. That is our goose animation using a timer and sprites.